Christian Pilgrim, a sermon by Jonathan Edwards. And they confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. People who say such things show that they are seeking a country of their own. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 13 and 14. The apostle is here establishing the excellencies of grace and faith by the glorious effects and happy result of this in the saints of the Old Testament. Two things can be observed here: that these saints confessed of themselves that they were strangers and pilgrims on earth. Thus, we have a particular account concerning Abraham. "I am a stranger and a pilgrim among you." And this seems to have been the general feeling of the patriarchs. As Jacob says to Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage." The psalmist says, "For I am a stranger with you, and a sojourner, as were all my fathers." The conclusion that the apostle draws from this, that they sought another country as their home. For those who say this clearly show that they are seeking a homeland. By confessing that they were strangers, they clearly declared that this is not their country, that this is not the place where they are at home. And by confessing to being pilgrims, they clearly declared that this is not their final dwelling place, but that they belong to some other country which they were seeking and to which they were traveling. Let this life thus be spent as being only a journey or pilgrimage towards heaven. Here I observe that we should not rest in this world and its pleasures, but should desire heaven. We should seek first the kingdom of God. We should above all things desire a heavenly happiness, to be with God and to dwell with Jesus Christ. Though surrounded by outward pleasures and established in families with desirable friends and relationships, though we have companions whose friendship is pleasant and children in whom we see many promising qualities, and yet we should not take our rest from these things as our portion. We should be so far from resting on these things that we would desire to leave them all behind in God's due time. We should possess, enjoy, and use them without any other purpose, but be ready to leave them whenever we are called to do so, and to exchange them willingly and joyfully for heaven. A traveler is not in the habit of resting on what he finds on the road, even if it is comfortable and pleasant. Whether he passes through pleasant places, flowery gardens, or dark woods, he does not find his satisfaction in these things, but only has a fleeting glimpse of them as he travels alone. He is not seduced by fine appearances to the point of postponing the idea of continuing. No, but the end of his journey is in his mind. If he finds himself with comfortable accommodations in a hotel, he does not entertain thoughts of settling there. He will consider that these things are not his, but that he is a stranger there, and when he has refreshed himself or stayed for a night, he will move on. It is pleasant for him to think that some of the journey is already behind him. Similarly, we desire heaven more than the comforts and pleasures of this life. The article mentions this as an encouraging, comforting vision for Christians, that they are drawing closer to their happiness. Our salvation is now nearer to us than when we first accepted the faith. The article mentions this as an encouraging, comforting vision for Christians, that they are drawing closer to their happiness. Our salvation is now nearer to us than when we first accepted the faith. Our hearts should be detached from these things, like a man on a journey. May we so joyfully depart from them whenever God calls. This, however, I say to you, brothers, that the time is short. What remains is that those who have wives should be as if they had none, and those who mourn as if they did not mourn, and those who rejoice as if they did not rejoice, and those who buy as if they did not possess, and those who use this world as if they did not abuse it, for the form of this world is passing away. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 29 to 31. These things are only loaned to us for a little while, to serve for a moment, but we must set our hearts on heaven as our inheritance forever. We must seek heaven, traveling the path that leads there. This is the path to holiness. We must choose and desire to travel there in this way, and not another, and separate ourselves from all carnal appetites, which, like weights, will tend to hinder us. Let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. No matter how pleasurable the gratification of any appetite may be, we must put it aside if it is an obstacle or a stumbling block on the way to heaven. We must journey in obedience to all of God's commandments, even the difficult ones, as well as the easy ones, renouncing all our sinful inclinations and interests. The path to heaven is upward. We must be content to travel uphill, even if it is difficult and tiring and contrary to the natural path of our flesh. We must follow Christ, for the path he traveled was the right path to heaven. We must take up our cross and follow him in meekness and humility of heart, in obedience and love, diligence to do good, and patience under afflictions. The way to heaven is a heavenly life, an imitation of those who are in heaven, in their holy joys, loving, worshiping, serving and praising God and the Lamb. Even if we could go to heaven with the satisfaction of our desires, we should prefer a path of holiness and conformity and the spiritual rules of self-denial of the gospel. We must travel this path laboriously. Long journeys are undertaken with toil and fatigue, especially if through a desert. People in such a case expect nothing but to suffer hardship and weariness. Thus, we must journey on this path of holiness, redeeming our time and strength to overcome the difficulties and obstacles that lie in our way. The land we must cross is a desert. There are many mountains, rocks, and rough places that we must traverse, and therefore there is a need for us to expend our strength. Our entire lives should be spent traveling this road. We must begin early. This should be the first concern when people become capable of action. When first established in the world, they should begin this journey, and we must travel diligently. This should be the daily endeavor. We should frequently think about the end of our journey and make it our daily work to travel the path that leads to that end. He who is on a journey is frequently thinking of his destined destination, and it is his daily care and interest to proceed well and to make the most of his time to draw nearer to the end of his journey. Thus, heaven should be continually in our thoughts, and the immediate entrance or passage to it, that is, death, should be present with us. We must persevere in this path while we live. Let us run with patience the race that is set before us. Though the road is hard and arduous, we must endure with patience and remain content while bearing difficulties. Although the journey is long, we cannot stop suddenly, but we must endure until we reach the place we seek. Nor should we be discouraged by the length and difficulties of the path, as the children of Israel did, wishing to turn back. All our thoughts and aims must move forward until we arrive. We must be continually growing in holiness, and in this respect, drawing ever closer to heaven. We should be striving to draw nearer to heaven, becoming more heavenly, becoming more and more like the inhabitants of heaven in relation to holiness and conformity to God, and the knowledge of God and of Christ, in a clear vision of the glory of God, the beauty of Christ, and the excellence of divine things, leads us to draw nearer to the heavenly vision. We should work to continually grow in divine love, that this may be a growing flame in our hearts, until they are totally consumed in this flame, in obedience and in a heavenly life, so that we may do the will of God on earth as the angels do in heaven, in spiritual comfort and joy, in sensitive communion with God and Jesus Christ. Our path should be like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until the full day. We should hunger and thirst for righteousness, for growth in righteousness. Like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation. The perfection of heaven should be our mark. One thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. All other concerns of life should be entirely subordinated to this. When a man is on a journey, every step he takes is subordinated to the goal of reaching the end of his journey. And if he brings money or provisions with him, it is to supply him on his journey. So we must totally subordinate all other interests and all our temporal pleasures, because we are traveling to heaven. When anything we have becomes an obstruction and hindrance to us, we must abandon it immediately. The use of our worldly pleasures and possessions should be with such a view and in such a manner as to advance us on our path to heaven. Thus we should eat and drink and clothe ourselves and improve conversation and enjoyment with friends. And in everything we intend, whatever project we are involved in, we should ask ourselves if this project or plan will advance us on our way to heaven. And if not, we should abandon this plan of ours. Why is the Christian life a journey or pilgrimage? This world is not our permanent place. Our stay here is very short. Man's days on earth are like a shadow. It was never God's plan that this world should be our home, nor did God give us these temporary accommodations for that purpose. If God has given us ample possessions and children or other pleasant friends, it is not with such a design, namely, that we should be accommodated here as if it were an established dwelling, but with a design that we should use them for the present and then leave them in a short time. When we are called to any secular business or entrusted with the care of a family, if we employ our lives for any other purpose than a journey to heaven, all our labor will be lost. If we spend our lives seeking earthly happiness, such as riches or sensual pleasures, the credit and esteem of men, rejoicing in our children, and in the prospect of seeing them well educated and well established, etc., all these things will be of little significance to us. Death will end all our hopes and put an end to these pleasures. The places that knew us will know us no more, and the eye that saw us will see us no more. We must be taken forever from all these things, and it is uncertain when this will happen. It may be soon after we are placed in possession of them, and then where will all our worldly occupations and pleasures be when we are laid in the silent grave? The entire future world was designed to be our established and eternal dwelling place. It was intended that we should be established there, and only heaven is a permanent habitation and an enduring inheritance. The present state is short and transient, but our state in the other world is eternal, and once we arrive there, there will be no change. Our state in the future world, therefore, being eternal, is of far greater importance than our state here, so that all our concerns in this world are wholly subordinate to it. Heaven is that one place where our highest end and highest good are to be attained. God made us for himself, for from him and through him and to him are all things. Thus, we can attain our highest purpose when we are brought to God, but this is by being taken to heaven, to the throne of God, the place of his special presence. There is only a very imperfect union with God to be had in the present world, a very imperfect knowledge of him amidst much darkness, a very imperfect conformity to God, mixed with an abundance of dross. Here we can serve and glorify God, but in a very imperfect way. Our service is mixed with sin, which dishonors God. But when we reach heaven, if indeed we do, we will be brought into a perfect union with God, and we will have a clearer vision of him. There we shall be wholly conformed to God, without any remaining sin, for we shall see him as he is. We must then serve God perfectly and glorify him exceedingly, to the utmost of the powers and capacity of our nature. Then we shall perfectly surrender ourselves to God. Our hearts shall be pure and holy offerings, presented in a flame of divine love. God is the greatest good of the rational creature, and the enjoyment of him is the only happiness with which our souls can be satisfied. Therefore, going to heaven to fully enjoy God is infinitely better than the most pleasant accommodations here. Fathers and mothers, husbands, wives, or children, or the company of earthly friends are but shadows, but the enjoyment of God is the substance. These are but rays, but God is the sun. These are but streams, but God is the fountain. These are but drops, but God is the ocean. Therefore, it behooves us to spend this life only as a journey to heaven, as it behooves us to seek our highest purpose and good, the full work of our living, to which we must subordinate all other concerns of life. Why should we work or set our hearts on anything other than what is our own end and true happiness? Our present state and all that pertains to it is ordained by him who made all things to be wholly subservient to the world to come. This world was made as a place of preparation for another. Man's mortal life was granted to him so that he might be prepared for his permanent state, and everything that God has given us here is given for this purpose. The sun shines and the rain falls upon us. The earth produces its fruit for us for this end. Civil, religious, and family affairs, and all our personal interests, are designed and ordered in subordination to the future world by the Creator and Ordainer of all things. Therefore, they must be subordinated by us. The instruction is given by the consideration that life is a journey, or pilgrimage, towards heaven. This doctrine can teach us moderation in our grief for the loss of dear friends who, while they lived, organized their lives for the right purposes. If indeed they lived a holy life, then their lives were a journey to heaven. And why should we be excessive in our grief when they have reached the end of their journey? Death, though it seems to us a terrible aspect, is for them a great blessing. Their end is happy and better than their beginning. The day of their death is better for them than the day of their birth. While they lived, they desired heaven, and chose it before this world, or any of its pleasures. They sincerely desired it. So why should we lament that they have obtained it? How they have arrived at their Father's house. They have thousands of times more comforts now that they have arrived home than they had on their journey. In this present world, they have endured much toil and hardship, as if through a desert. There were many difficulties along the way, mountains and rough places. It was laborious and tiring to travel the path, and they had many weary days and nights. But now they have arrived at their eternal rest. And I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, "Write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their deeds follow them. They look back on the difficulties and sorrows and dangers of life, rejoicing that they have overcome them all. We are ready to face death as its calamity, and to lament that those who were so dear to us are in a dark grave, consumed by corruption and worms, taken from their beloved children, pleasures, and so on, in terrible circumstances. However, this is due to our weakness. They are in a happy condition, inconceivably blessed. They do not weep, but rejoice with extreme joy. Their mouths are full of joyful songs, and they drink from rivers of pleasure. They find no sorrow in exchanging their earthly joys and the company of mortals for heaven. Their life here on earth, though under the best of circumstances, was marked by many adversities and afflictions, but now all these have come to an end. Never again will they hunger, never again will they thirst. The sun will not beat down on them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd. He will lead them to springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. It is true that we will no longer see them in this world, but we must consider that we are traveling towards the same peace, and why should we grieve our hearts because they have arrived there before us? We are following after them, and we hope that, once we reach the end of our journey, we will be with them again in better circumstances. A degree of mourning for close relatives when they have passed away is not incompatible with Christianity, but very much in keeping with it. For while we are flesh and blood, we have animal propensities and affections, but we have just reason for our mourning to be mixed with joy. But I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep, lest you sorrow as others who have no hope. Therefore we should not suffer like the Gentiles, who had no knowledge of a future happiness. This appears in the following verse. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. If our life should be only a journey to heaven, how poorly do those who spend their lives traveling to hell cultivate their lives. Some men spend their entire lives, from their childhood to the day of their death, descending the broad path to destruction. They not only approach hell in time, but each day they hasten toward destruction. They are more like the inhabitants of the infernal world. While others advance on the narrow and straight path to life and laboriously journey up the mountain toward Zion against the inclinations and tendencies of the flesh, these run with swift feet toward eternal death. This is the employment of all duties with all wicked men, and their whole day is spent in this. As soon as they wake up in the morning, they set out again on the road to hell and spend their time there. They begin in the first days. The wicked go astray from the womb. They go astray from birth, speaking lies. They cling to them with perseverance. Many of them who reach old age are never tired of them. Though they reach 100 years of age, they will not cease traveling on the road to hell until they arrive there. And all the concerns of life are subordinated to this undertaking. A wicked man is a servant of sin. His powers and faculties are employed in the service of sin and in fitness for hell, and all his possessions are thus used by him to be subservient to the same purpose. Men spend their time accumulating wrath for the day of wrath. So do all impure people who live in lascivious practices in secret, all malicious people, all profane people who neglect Christian duties. So do all unjust people, and those who are fraudulent and oppressive in their transactions. So do all slanderers and backbiters, all avaricious people who set their hearts mainly on the riches of this world. So do frequenters of immoral places and frequenters of bad company, and many other types that could be mentioned. Thus, the greater part of humanity hastens on the broad road to destruction, which is, as it once was, filled with the multitude that is going on the same road accordingly. And they are every day going to hell on this broad road by the thousands. Multitudes are continually flowing into the great lake of fire and brimstone, like a mighty river that constantly empties its waters into the ocean. Thus, when people are converted, they begin their work and set out on the path they must follow. They have never, until then, done anything in this work in which their whole life should be spent. People before conversion never take a step in that direction. Thus, a man is initially set on his journey when he is brought home to Christ. And so far is he from having done his work, that his care and labor in his Christian work is then begun, in which he must spend the remainder of his life. People do wrong when they are converted and have obtained a hope of being in good condition by not striving with as much fervor as they did before, while they were awake. They must, from now on and as long as they live, be as earnest and diligent, as watchful and careful as never before. Yes, they must increase more and more. It is no just excuse that they have now obtained conversion. Shouldn't we be just as diligent in serving and glorifying God, while we ourselves can be happy? And if we have obtained grace, we should strive even harder to reach the other levels that lie ahead, just as we did to obtain this small level that we have already achieved. The apostle tells us that he forgot what was behind and pressed on toward what was ahead. Yes, those who are converted now have one more reason to strive for grace, for they have seen something of its excellence. A man who has once tasted the blessings of Canaan has one more reason to march toward it than he had before. And those who are converted should strive to make their calling and election sure. Not all who are converted are absolutely certain of this, and those who are certain do not know if they will always possess certainty. And so continuing to seek and serve God with the utmost diligence is the way to have certainty and to have it maintained. An exhortation: live your present life in such a way that it may be but a path to heaven. Work to obtain such a disposition of mind that you may choose heaven as your inheritance and home, and may sincerely hope for it, and be willing to exchange the world and all its pleasures for heaven. Work to have your heart so ensnared by heaven and the heavenly pleasures that you may rejoice when God calls you to leave your earthly possessions and comforts for heaven, to enjoy God and Christ. Convince yourself to travel the path that leads to heaven in holiness, self-denial, mortification, and obedience to all God's commandments. following the example of Christ in the form of a heavenly life or imitation of the saints and angels in heaven. Let this be your daily work, from morning to night, and persevere in it to the end. Let nothing stop, discourage, or take you away from this path, and let all other concerns be subordinated to this. Consider the reasons that have been mentioned as to why you should thus spend your life, that this world is not your place of abiding, that the world to come should be your eternal dwelling place, and that the pleasures and concerns of this world are given entirely in subordination to the world to come. And consider further the reason. How worthy is heaven that your life should be wholly spent as a journey towards it? For what better purpose can you spend your life if you respect your duty or your interest? What better end can you propose for your journey than to obtain heaven? You are placed in this world. With a choice given to you, you may travel the path you wish, and one path leads to heaven. Now, can you direct your course better than this path? All men have some aim or another in life. Some seek chiefly the things of the world. They spend their days in such pursuits. But is not heaven, where there is fullness of joy forever, far more worthy of being sought by you? How can you better employ your strength, use your resources, and spend your days than by traveling the road that leads to the eternal joy of God, to His glorious presence, to the new heavenly Jerusalem, to Mount Zion, where all your desires will be fulfilled, and there is never any danger of losing your happiness? No man is at home in this world, whether he chooses heaven or not. Here he is nothing but a transient person. What other place could you choose for your home that would be better than heaven? This is the way death is comfortable for us. To spend our lives so that it is merely a journey to heaven is the way to be free from bondage, and to have the perspective and premeditation of death comfortable. Does the traveler think of the end of his journey with fear and terror? Is it terrible for him to think that he is about to reach the end of his journey? Were the children of Israel disgusted after 40 years of journeying in the desert when they were about to reach Canaan? This is the way we partake of this world without suffering. Does the traveler lament when he arrives home, to leave his staff and load of provisions that he possessed to sustain him along the way? Nothing more of your life will be pleasant to think about when you are about to die than having spent it in this way. If you have spent nothing in your life in this way, your whole life will be terrible to you to think about, unless you die in some great illusion. You will see then that all your life that was spent otherwise is lost. You will then see the vanity of all the other goals you have set for yourself. The thought of what you possessed and enjoyed here will not be pleasant, unless you can also think that you have subordinated them to this purpose. Consider that those who are willing to live their lives as a journey to heaven can obtain heaven. Heaven, though high and glorious, is attainable for such poor, useless creatures as we are. We can reach that glorious region which is the dwelling place of the angels. Yes, the dwelling place of the Son of God, and where is the presence of the glory of the great Jehovah. And we can have it freely, without money, and without price, if we are willing to travel the path that leads to it. And if we convert from the course of this path in which we live, we can and will have heaven as our place of eternal rest. Consider that if our lives are not a journey to heaven, they will be a journey to hell. All humanity, after having been here for a short time, will go to one of the two great destinations of all who depart from this world, namely, one is heaven, to which a small number, in comparison, travel, and the other is hell, to which the greater part of humanity goes. This or that must be the result of our course in this world. Work to have a notion of the vanity of this world, because of the little satisfaction there is to be enjoyed here, its short stay and uselessness to assist us when we most need help on a deathbed. All men who live any considerable time in the world can see enough to convince them of its vanity, if they take the trouble to reflect. Therefore, be persuaded to exercise consideration when you see and hear about the death of others over time. Work to transform your thoughts in this way. View the vanity of the world through this lens. Work to become thoroughly familiar with heaven. If you are not familiar with it, you will not be able to spend your life as a journey there. You will not be sensitive to its value, nor will you expect much from it. Unless you are very familiar in your mind with this greater good, it will be much more difficult for you to have a heart detached from these things, and to use them only in subordination to any other things, and to be ready to depart from them for the sake of that greater good. Work, therefore, to gain a perceptive sense of a heavenly world, to obtain a firm conviction of its reality, and to be very familiar with it in your thoughts. Seek heaven only through Jesus Christ. Christ tells us that He is the way, and the truth, and the life. He tells us that He is the gate for the sheep. I am the gate. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. If therefore we strive to improve our lives as a journey to heaven, we must do so through Him, and not by our own righteousness, hoping to obtain it only because of Him, looking to Him, depending on Him who has acquired it for us by His merit. And from Him alone we expect strength to walk in holiness, the path that leads to heaven. May Christians help one another on this journey. There are many ways in which Christians can greatly help one another on their way to heaven, such as meetings, etc. Therefore, let them be exhorted to go on this path as if in company, conversing together and helping one another. Company is very desirable on a journey, but on none other so much as on this one. Let them go together and not fall by the wayside, which would be to embarrass one another, but let them use every possible means to help one another uphill. This would ensure a more successful journey and a more joyful reunion in their Father's house in glory. Pray that the Holy Spirit will use this sermon to bring many to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and don't forget to watch the other videos on the channel. God bless.